Hey, everybody. We are in conversation number 63, and I guess the first thing that we're going to talk about is the conspiracy, Epstein conspiracy, or whatever it is, Epstein affair. What's going on here? Trump is now asking the Republicans to release all of a sudden after not wanting it to release. I don't really get this. And then there was some leaked emails. Between Jeffrey Epstein and Larry Summers, and now Larry Summers is um, basically going to take a step back. Seems like he's just going to disappear as a public figure. What it sounds like he'll still be teaching at Harvard, but a lot of his appointments will be, removed. New York Times is not renewing his op-ed contract, I guess. Yeah. So, what's your take on that? What's going on?
Well, it's a interesting tale. Of course, hardcore conversation listeners may remember we had a episode with Ted Frank a while back, who is kind of I don't know, Epstein skeptic. It's not quite the right word, but his position was that Jeffrey Epstein was just a pervert, and that all of the more salacious stuff about other rich and powerful people sleeping with the girls or being blackmailed or having some sort of intelligence community connection, that's just all made up. So people who want can go back and listen to that to see that case. I would say I found it maybe 85% convincing. I think individually it's hard for me to get firm closure on the Epstein stuff, because I think each element individually you can come up with some sort of individual explanation, but there is an awful lot of smoke with no fire, maybe, and even since then, since we did that episode, there was the Trump had the letter, the birthday letter that he sent to Epstein. That whole thing came out. Now there are these other emails, which include there's no emails from Trump, but there are there are emails with Epstein saying, "Oh yeah, Trump knew about the girls. He was with such and such a victim at this time." And actually, they're ambiguous, right? They're certainly ambiguous, but they're kind of indicative that maybe something was going on. On the other hand, maybe not. It's hard to say. I will say, I saw like an ad on X that featured a bunch of victims that were basically like, released the Epstein files, and there was even some sort of press conference where one of the victims was saying, well, we have our own Epstein client list, and if Congress won't release the list, then maybe we'll release it. And to me, that does raise a question, which I think Ted mentioned during his episode with us, which is, so the official claim, the claim of the DOJ and Ted and other people is all of the girls, like, there's basically only one abuser, which was Jeffrey Epstein. Like, no one else had sex with the girls except for Jeffrey Epstein. And if that's not true, surely the girls would be the ones that would know it. They're women now, but the victims. So it's a little weird that, with the one exception of, there was the one exception of, I think, Victoria. I can't even remember how it's like
Gouffre.
Yeah, I don't even remember. I'm not, as people might be able to tell, I'm not hugely deep in the weeds on this stuff. But it's surprising that, like, for the most part, even victims who will imply or say, that other people were involved. They don't want to name particular names, even though as we've seen, just writing Jeffrey Epstein some friendly emails, as with Larry Summers, can be enough to like ruin your reputation and get you fired and canceled and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
So
well, okay, just to be clear here,
yeah,
Larry Summers was asking Epstein for dating advice right up until he was arrested.
okay. I mean, but yeah, that's fair. I don't know that I personally would go to to Jeffrey Epstein for dating advice, but it's not like he was. There's no allegation, and there's nothing in the emails to suggest that Larry Summers was sleeping with any of the victims or had
Yes.
any involvement in anything like that. It's just he was emailing Jeffrey Epstein and asking for advice, which is not only not illegal, but I mean like the only thing I think you could say about it is, well, this was after Epstein had been convicted of the crime involving prostitution or whatever the thing was, and so it was known that he was a sex offender, right? Okay, and I mean that like it's been known for a long time that many people, many famous, powerful people, celebrities, other people had associations with Jeffrey Epstein up until he got arrested the second time, and like Larry Summers is not.
Yeah. I think the issue with Larry Summers is, he has like a track record of getting in trouble with his colleagues, and he's in academia where,
Sure.
This was for example, it's like people aren't being very explicit about it, or like they're trying to like preserve the identity, but I forget her name now. Her last name is Jin, economist at London School of Economics. The person that he was trying to have an affair with was very attractive. At the time, she was 30 something. In her mid 30s, I think, mid 30s woman who he was not in a supervisory role, but obviously he's a senior economist. She was at the time, I think that would be like junior to mid career economist, but Harvard graduate, good pedigree. So there's obviously that's not illegal at all. There's an online debate, which to be honest, I think is kind of dumb debate, whether that's creepy or not, because he's way older. I mean, the issue is he's married. That part is creepy in terms of okay, like he's trying to figure out how to have an affair. Although, I mean, not to like sound non-judgmental, but we don't even know. Someone like Eric Schmidt, the CEO of Google, like has stayed married despite the fact of having girlfriends for like decades.
Sure, yeah.
So I mean, that's obviously his ex-wife. I think they're just like married on paper. She has like a really nice life, and he takes care of her, but they're not really together anymore. This is a common thing. Willie Brown did that too. Willie Brown, former mayor of Massachusetts, of San Francisco, and like Kamala Harris was his paramour in the 1990s. One of the cavalcade of young women that he dated while he was married. He's still married. Anyway, so that's that, and then there's the age gap thing, and so I think people are not being very specific about her identity, though. Partly, honestly, because you could imagine that it's his graduate student or something.
Yeah, it makes it sound worse than it is. I will say, I mean, maybe I don't know. Actually, this might get me in trouble, although my wife has the same opinion. I don't care. Like, you should not cheat on your wife, okay? That's bad, right? Totally disavow. But age gap, like, I don't really care about age gaps. Really, I mean, this one, it wasn't. I mean, she's 37. I tried to do the math, and he would have been like 50. So. I mean,
it's just dumb. Here? It's dumb. It's basically guilt by association with Epstein is the primary determinative thing.
Yes.
I don't think I don't think all of this would have happened if it wasn't Epstein, and if it wasn't Epstein right before he was arrested, right?
Yeah, I guess, but I mean, it just seems weird, and actually, one of the funnier parts of the email exchanges is there is one part where Larry Summers says something like, "It's odd to me that according to the American elite, if a woman kills her child, that should have
Yeah,
no impact on whether on her application to be
that's
a
a real
student.
person. That's a real person.
Yeah. But if a guy hit on women 10 years ago, he can't have a role at any network or think tank. And then he
It
puts
happens to
himself
him.
down. Do not repeat this insight. So, okay. But, I mean, that is, I mean, there are like weird, I mean, it's a weird thing because it would not, and some of this is changing norms, some of this is just hypocrisy, some of this is people forgetting or whatever. But it wouldn't have been too long ago, I think, where um, to say that you want to um, disassociate. I mean, there's definitely a view like right now about, oh, we need to rehabilitate people and you should not be able to use criminal background for employment or other stuff, right? Um, and even, maybe like now people would say, well, you carve out an exception if someone is a sex offender, right? But it wasn't so long ago that actually liberals took a very latitudinarian line on this stuff,
Yeah.
especially for statutory rape or other things like that. I mean, Roman Polanski got a standing
Yeah.
ovation at the Oscars or whatever, and I just know. I mean, I'm old enough to remember, how people used to think, and it's not like they approved of this stuff, but it was also like the idea that okay,
So yeah, this is 2003 Academy Awards. So
yeah,
this is a little over 20 years ago. It's not that long ago.
right, and it's not that. I mean, it's not that long between. It was only a couple years later that Epstein, that the case happened, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's a lot of people who would think, well, I don't know what his back, I know that he had some, he got into trouble.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just say something here because I think Dick Hanania has been talking about this and
Yeah.
this age gap thing. So I think part of the issue. I'm sorry I interrupted, but I think part of the issue we have to be explicit here is um, there's an arbitrariness to this, and
All right.
where it's just because in France, it's illegal. I think if the person is under 14 and the other person is an adult, right?
Yeah.
In the United States, it depends on the state, I think, but 18 is kind of like the social norm. And I think
Right.
some of what's going on here is people like Dick and Ani are pointing out it's absurd where it's oh, in France
Yeah.
it's totally okay, but in the United States, how can you even think that? Where it's
Right.
okay, it's obviously just a social convention, just quote unquote. Anyway, go on.
Yeah. So I want to be clear. When I was talking about age gaps before, I'm just talking about adults. All right.
Yes.
I'm just talking about over 18.
Yes.
People, there's all sorts of nice philosophical questions you can have about age of consent laws and where they should be, and they vary from time and place or whatever. I don't as I mean, I have a daughter. She's much she's young enough that it's not even an issue now, but with both the daughters and sons, I'm perfectly fine with age of consent at 18. I'm not eager to see that.
It's not a big. What I would say is it's not a big controversial thing,
Right.
but also I think I would just say that okay, we also have to admit it's a little arbitrary, right? I'm also not being how dare the French. I mean, I think it's a little creepy. I'm not gonna lie, it's a little too low for me. But I'm just trying to say it's okay, this isn't slavery in Mauritania or something,
Right.
It's a social norm you have to have, and you have to draw the line somewhere. And it's okay.
And I don't. I mean, and I'm just all I'm saying is, it's what has come out, particularly in the subsequent to 2019 or whatever, the second arrest. I mean, there seems to be a lot of really awful stuff there that I don't think was some of it may be that people are reading back stuff from the second case into the first case in terms of like what was publicly known in that. And I'm sure, all that was really known in the first case was, okay, he pled, pled guilty to having sex with like one 17-year-old or something like that. Maybe she's 16. I don't know. But it's a case where it's not many victims, of varying ages and with elements of coercion, manipulation, other stuff like that before you, even assuming just like the minimal case that it was just him. So that's obviously on a different level, but you can't read that knowledge back to people who were associating with Epstein, prior to that, right? Like, I mean, I'm sure some people didn't even know, like, they may not have even known, or if they know, it's just like, okay, he had, he once had sex with a 17-year-old girl, that in their mind, right? So anyway, and the bigger point is, especially, norms on this, I think, have shifted to the point that, like, it was not so long ago that, especially if you were in, tolerant cosmopolitan circles, you did not view this. I mean, it's not that you thought it was good, but you didn't view it as a huge big deal where it's like, I can't associate with that person, ever. I can't send them an email. And so I think, it's a little weird to kind of try and retroactively, like,
so the thing with Epstein, we've talked about this, is like,
yeah.
He seems like a really social guy. He's a little bit like, the Samo Buria of rich financiers that like to like invest in magazines and science and stuff. Like take a picture with Pinker, with Larry Summers, with Lawrence Krauss, like all of these kind of like the type of people that were like at pro science new atheist conventions in the 2000s. And actually, like I got some. I think I got some Epstein money. I don't know for sure, but I wrote for Seed magazine. I think got some Epstein money, and I wrote science blogs for Seed, and also I know Nautilus. I've written for Nautilus, although like way after Epstein. But Epstein funded Nautilus. I mean, he was funding all sorts of random. Like
Sure.
sometimes people say like right wing people, like Curtis Jarvin has said this. But yeah, that's an inside joke. But like, I'm gonna go with it. So Curtis Jarvin was saying that he and Samo and others have said, well, these conservative right wing billionaires, they don't give any money. I don't know. Well, Epstein was a Democrat, but I think he was more centrist, is what you would say.
Right.
But
he
gave like reasonable amounts of money to a lot of science publications. A lot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know why, but he did. That was just the thing he did. Like his fingerprints are all over glossy science magazine type publications over the last 25 years. It just is. He was also funding. He was funding like retreats for Edge.org. That website, if you remember, I think it's still around. John Brockman, the super agent. So I mean, he was at the center of a lot of public intellectual activity in the first part of the 21st century. And the sites like Edge, Seed Magazine, Nautilus, all of these were just part of blossoming online / offline science publications, and he was there and involved, and it's just like kind of weird, but it is also just like a fact.
Right. And I you have to assume assuming that there's not some broader, like, I don't know what the Mossad would want to do with like funding Noam Chomsky's linguistic research necessarily, but
Noam Chomsky was apparently a good friend of Epstein, who kept like emailing him until he was like arrested or died or whatever too. So again, It's like,
although, a secret, and I mean Chomsky, even though he is still alive, he is
he's incapacitated. Basically,
he's incapacitated. But a kind of open secret for Noam Chomsky was, if you emailed him, just anybody, you could be.
He would email you back.
He would email you back. It wouldn't necessarily be like, it might be like a one sentence email, but he would email you back and address, like if you ask him a question. In fact, we have we like, I know a guy, you know him too, who among his many, he has some hobby horses, and one of them is the idea that he wants to like dig up the corpse of John von Neumann and clone him. And so
Yes.
he would just
Yeah.
emailed Noam
Yeah.
Chomsky
Yeah.
and be like, "Hey, what do you think about this idea? Should we should we clone John von Neumann?" And Chomsky would email back just like, "No, I don't think that's a good." So okay, so anyway, we're getting a little off track, but I guess the point is, if you're in some ways, I feel like Epstein, he appears to have kind of like the mentality of maybe a 15-year-old boy or something. And what I mean by that is, it's like, what would you do if you just had a bunch of money, right? Huge amount of money. Well, one thing you do is you want to have sex with a lot of young ladies. And, but another thing that you would do is, oh, well, I just have all these people that I like, celebrities, politicians, sciencey people, and so I want to use my money to like meet them and support them and have conversations with them and so on and so forth. And so I kind of got this, like, he was just throwing his money around in order to have access to these people who he thought were kind of cool. And his idea of what cool was not, it was a bit nerdier than the average person's conception of that, but
Yeah. That's
the
fair. That's fair. He was just, I mean, he was a little bit of an eccentric, and I guess like people are having a hard time fitting him into a simple box, and that's where we are with that. We should probably just like switch. We're a little pressed for time today.
yes,
I guess like we want to talk. We're going to talk about Dasha Nekrasova in the paywall. We will get to
right,
her.
right,
I wouldn't say we're friends, but I would also not say we're acquaintances. I think
okay.
we're in between. I mean, I
I've
met her
never
IRL.
met. Yeah,
We met her IRL, and she replies to my tweets and stuff like that. And she, so anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about her. But like, first, I want to talk about, we're going to talk about Ozempic GLPs, right?
yes, that's
And so,
right.
for those of you who do not know, GLPs they are basically receptors. Glucagon-like peptide is what they stand for. So basically, like people just call them peptides. Uh, and Ozempic is the most popular one. It's been out for a long time. And Ozempic, so it's a brand name of glucagon-like peptide one, GLP-1,
But
and
I,
yeah,
I'm sorry, I'll let you continue.
yeah.
But just for purposes of this conversation and just in general, in the same, I treat Ozempic the way that I would also treat, Coke or
It's a
Band
generic term.
Aid.
Yeah, yeah, it's a generic term.
It's a generic term for all of these, GLP or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah,
I realize it's like they're not all Ozempic. There's these other,
yeah.
whatever. But okay, so go ahead.
So you have so Ozempic is a first generation GLP-1. It is like the canonical GLP-1, and so yeah, it basically slows the stomach emptying, boosts insulin, and it suppresses glucagon, which I think is has to do with satiety. So basically, you have less hunger, fewer cravings, weight loss, reduced appetite, et cetera, okay? There's a second generation of GLPs, like Mounjaro is like a brand name of one of them. I think it's called Ozempic is semaglutide, and then Mounjaro is tirzepatide. Anyways, it's basically just another one. It's another type of peptide that's very similar. It does similar things and targets some of the same things as the first peptide GLP-1. It's called glucose dependent insulin tropic polypeptide (GIP). Okay, GIP and GLP-1 are very similar. They do similar things. They just amplify each other. I have a lot of friends who are actually have taken Mounjaro and pretty open, like my friend Garrett Jones. Okay, just give you a real example. And then there's other GLPs which are not. They're only for research purposes only. And so Retatrutide is, by Eli Lilly. It's in trials. It'll be out probably sometime in 2026. This is a third generation, and it has something different called a glucagon receptor. The easiest way to think about it is the glucagon receptor seems like it increases metabolism. And so obviously it's the trials have shown that retatrutide is better and more efficient at weight loss, And this has really transformed a lot of people's lives over the last, I would say last 3 to 4 years. It's really become
Mhm.
common. So GLP-1, semaglutide, has been around actually for almost 25 years. And it's been usually mostly used by like morbidly obese people with type 2 diabetes. So it's a way to lose weight and, reverse effect of type 2 diabetes. So what people realized is people who are not type 2 diabetic, morbid, or obese, they can take it too and lose weight, right? So I've lost 40 in 10 months. Most of it, like half of it, was within a month and a half. And then the other half, the last like 20 has taken the rest of the time. So, there's an immediate drop off and then you slowly kind of drop off. And so a lot of people that I know are taking it. Many of us are taking it. Um, I've dated people who've taken it. Actually, I've dated several people who've taken it. So this is just very common in a lot of circles. Josiah, you have never had to take it for obvious reasons because Josiah seems to have natural GLP-1. His semaglutide is. Basically, a lot of people, they get hungry all the time, and all of a sudden you don't get hungry, and so you just eat less. So it's done a couple of things that I will say immediately. Positivity is out. like take a look at Amy Schumer. Take a look at that
Adele,
the singer
Adele.
uh, Adele, but also like that's like the from like Massachusetts, who's talking about how like guys like girls with a little.
Oh, Megan Trainor. Yes,
Yeah, she's totally like transformed her look.
yes, that's
So
right.
all these people have
Alex
changed.
Jones. He
Alex Jones.
clearly.
So Alex Jones like does look a little
It
much.
doesn't always. Yeah, I will. I mean,
Well, the thing is,
uh,
Alex Jones is older, and he was also like obese for a lot of it. Like he was actually pretty. He was pretty like football player, pretty jacked when he was younger. But he's
yeah,
been obese for about like 15 years or so, and so I think like there's some issues there.
yeah. Well, and I will say, and some of the. I mean, I'm not the target audience necessarily, but some guys who I've seen, go through this process. I mean, when a guy loses a bunch of weight, like when a guy loses a bunch of weight, sometimes it looks like he's been sick or something.
Yes,
Um,
that's always true. That's always true.
particularly if he's not, doing these.
GLP.
Yeah,
Look, I'll tell you. Like I am not. I'm
muscle.
not. I'm like 5'8", 160 right now, which is it's a healthy weight. I still want to like cut a little bit, but like set that aside. In 2008, I was working out a lot and stuff like that. I cut about like 20 pounds in probably 6 months from 160. So I was like 140 pounds. I was very thin. I'm also like I didn't look like cadaverous or anything. Like I have a slight build, so it was okay. But a friend of mine pulled me aside once, was like, "Hey, if you're having some issues with your health or something, like we could talk about it if you need someone to talk to." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" I was like, he was like, "Well, I was just wondering if you had cancer because you lost so much weight."
Right.
I kept all my hair and stuff like that, so he wasn't sure. But anyway, my only point is like it's not just about GLPs. Um, it's so Ozempic face and all these things. People have different responses. Like I have literally dozens of friends and I would say they're friends who are on it and have like tried it out, and so there's all sorts of responses. The one thing that I will say is if you're the type of person who eats because of not because of hunger but something else,
Mm-hmm.
GLP is not going to like affect you as much then. Like if you
Mm-hmm.
eat when you're stressed, if you binge eat when
Yeah.
you're stressed, you're gonna continue to get stressed. And you're probably gonna binge eat and you're gonna get sick because
Right.
the GLPs, like these peptides, will make you the gastritis, you're like basically your body is gonna be like you are eating way too much at a much lower threshold, right? And so some of the scare stories I've heard of GLPs I feel are a little misleading because the problem is not the GLP. The problem is, well, frankly, you. And I've heard that bariatric, like gastric bypass, all these types of bariatric surgeries are also pretty common. Like Matt Iglesias, our mutual acquaintance Matt Iglesias, like we met him like what 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago, and he was pretty fat then. Straight up, he was fat. He's pretty thin now, and that's because he did one of those gastric
Right.
surgeries. That was right before the GLP craze, but they will not do those to you unless they think that you can actually keep the weight off and lose weight because they will make you lose some weight first because they want to see
Mm-hmm.
that you
Do you
actually
have
lose weight, because otherwise, like, it's really bad for you to just like continue stuffing yourself when you don't have the
right?
stomach, you know.
Yes.
Anyway, so I've been talking for a while. Like, what do you think about this?
Well, so it's interesting. I have noticed this in other people. I, of course, as you know, I'm not a candidate for Ozempic or anything like that. But the thing that interests me, I mean, I do think obviously we have a huge obesity problem, and so things that help people lose weight and get healthy, I think, are to the good. Although you do have to worry about side effects, long term effects, other things. That the thing that I find intriguing about Ozempic is it seems to have all sorts of off target effects. You know, positive side effects, you might
Yeah,
say, or like
yeah.
other impulse related behaviors. So people not only do they lose weight, but they drink less, they smoke less. If they have a
Gamble less
gamble
even.
less,
I know people who've taken it supposedly for ADHD.
for ADHD, yes, that's something you hear now. You know, one thing that I think, and when I heard this and I looked at it, and it seems what I found was like mixed, you know, but there's some people. Like, does it have an effect on libido or sex drive or things like that? And it seems like at least in some cases it does. I mean, there's other cases I have seen where it seems like it might increase fertility, or it could
Yeah, yeah,
increase.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
some of that I think is just confounded by like if you lose weight, like A, you're going to look better, but B, I mean, just like being fat messes with your sex drive to begin with, you know,
Yeah.
and other stuff. So you can see a positive there, but it does seem that at least in some cases, and maybe this has to do with like individual psychology, um, is that people are just not, you know, they're just not as interested in sex anymore. And maybe that's because like
Yeah.
in the same way that people were, you know, it's reducing like, you know, so people call, I've heard people call it like the willpower drug or whatever, but it's just reducing like, you know,
Yeah.
craving based behaviors.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, okay, so I mean, I'm gonna say
I know,
I'm not gonna say who. I know someone where that has like, you know, their libido was affected, and that person had a lot of behavioral issues that had led
right.
to obesity, and so I actually was pretty scared of that effect, and that has, I will tell you, it has zero effect on me. And I also, like, I still, as you know, I still drink alcohol.
Yes.
Just I love you.
Yeah.
I still drink alcohol,
Right.
just without. But you also know, like, I'm not someone that needs to drink alcohol at all. It's
Yeah.
like 100% social, and so I think it depends on, you know, what your personality ticks are, and I think that's the
And,
key thing. You know, it's hard
and
to
what's the,
generalize.
yeah, I mean, I'm not a scientist and I don't, you know, I haven't looked into this deeply, but what occurs to me is, you know, people engage in these behaviors, whether it's drinking, gambling, sex, eating, for different reasons. You know, there's different underlying psychological motivations. And so I could see how Ozempic could affect a certain class of motivation. So if that's why you're doing something, right, um, then it would affect that. But that's only going to be a small subset because it's not the only reason why, you know, you want to gamble, right? You know,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. Yeah. I guess like it's one of those things where we're figuring out what's how people are reacting, because people are different, right? And so there's not one size fits all. One thing I will say, you know, people are worried about the long term effects. The reality is, uh, you know, people with type 2 diabetes, morbid, and obesity have been on this
sure,
for a generation now.
sure,
And probably they're, you know, I mean, I would bet that they're not. This is, you know, I think it was like the guy who like runs synthesis school, Rare Mutuals, Chrisman. He was like, oh, people who understand, you know, complex systems, like they should be worried about this. And then I think, you know, my friend uh, Heather Hying was like, yeah, you know, and it's like, you know, there's kind of like, you know, precautionary principle aspect to it, but like these are peptides. They're not. They're like quote unquote natural. Like they're in your, you know what I'm saying? They're already like
Sure.
produced by your body. So what all it's doing is changing the magnitude and the quantity of something that's already qualitatively in there. It's not a new drug, quote unquote. It's not like a synthetic chemical that's never been in your body, you know? And so like you, some of the things you say about like how you don't feel hunger, it's like clearly your body, like it's like you're naturally on like a high level of GLP or something, you know? And
Right.
like you're doing fine ish, you know?
Yes.
I mean, so I just think that, and another thing is, you know, this is kind of like one of those issues, like, yeah, like maybe it might have some long term side effects, but, you know, 40% of Americans are obese, not overweight,
Right.
but obese, you know? And obesity is finally leveled off and dropping only in the last couple of years because of GLPs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and like also like another thing to note is like you know, I mean I'll just like put it out there, like, you know, I'm taking like a very low dosage, microdosing, and it's had a huge effect because I was never, well, I wasn't literally never obese, but also you know, the trials, you know, the clinical trials are at, okay, I mean, I'll just say it, it's like 5x my, more than 5x my dosage, you know, of like some of these things, right? And so the point here is, I mean, I'm pretty chill about it, you know,
Yeah.
and that's because like you just do cost versus benefit and everything
Right.
like that. And just, you know, I have some friends who, you know, thin female friends who are like not super excited, but that's because their comparative advantage is being hit, and you
Right.
know they have to suffer by not eating and all this stuff. And they've done this their whole life, and now all these fatties are, you know what I'm saying.
Sure. Right. Right.
They're
Well, I
doing
mean,
this.
they could switch. You know, if the reason why they're thin is because they're starving themselves, they could
I
switch.
know, but I think it's like now it's just like kind of like the willpower thing, right? It's just like kind of their
Right.
pride.
Yeah, I
Um,
have heard. I mean, I have heard people say that like uh, I don't know that it's exactly like this, but people were like, well, now you know, being thin is not going to be as much of a status marker because before, if you were thin, it was an indication of like conscientiousness, self control, other things. And now, since you can just do it with a drug, it's going to lose its value. And I mean, this is like a recent, you know, like throughout most of human history, it was not the case that like 40% of people were fat and being, you know,
yeah,
thin
yeah.
was like a status marker. But also, I do think like, mm, I don't, I like when a guy sees a thin woman who is attractive, I don't think he's primarily be like, wow, she's got great self control. Okay, I don't think that's
By
not
any means necessary.
right,
By
right,
any
right.
means necessary.
So I suspect it will. I don't think that's going to be a limiting factor. You know, in the whole thing. I'll leave it there.
All right, we should